Jeffrey. If anyone knows silence, it's me. The silence in our classroom wasn't the worst. There was always someone you could turn to and whisper. It contained tons of sadness and guilt, but it wasn't absolute. Even Peter's silence was over. He was lucky. My silence at home pressed on, with nobody for me to turn to and with nobody in sight to rescue me. That silence was absolute. The only company in my house was more sadness and guilt. But somewhere along the way this year, Terupt taught me to see things different, to think about things different, to think about more than just me. It was always my silence and my fault. But now I started to think about Mom's silence and Dad's silence. Mom's fault and Dad's fault. They were hurting too. Why did I have to wait for them to talk to me? I didn't. A few days after James' party, I crept into Mom's bedroom where she lay on the bed in her pajamas. I climbed in next to her and put my arm around her. Then I told her, "It's not your fault. I love you." She didn't do anything, but I lay there and fell asleep, holding my mom. When I woke up, I felt good. I hope my words had helped her. I thought of Terupt as I walked out of her bedroom. He had helped me reach out. I missed him. I wished I had a chance to tell him how I felt too. I wanted him back so bad. I found Dad sitting in a chair in the family room, better called the be alone room in our house. He was home, so I must have slept for a while. I wondered if he would see me with Mom. Immediately, I knew it was going to be much harder for me to say those same words to him. We never talked to each other like that, not even before Michael died. "Hi, Dad." I sat on the sofa near his chair. "I saw you in there with your mother," he said. "She needs you, Jeffrey. You might be the only one who can help her." "Dad, it's not your fault," I blurted out. He didn't say anything. I knew my words would surprise him. They hit hard. I got up and went over and hugged him. "I love you," I said. I let go after a few seconds and headed out of the room. "It's not your fault either," Dad said before I was gone. I heard his voice breaking up as he said it. I felt that good feeling again and thought of Terupt. I thought about what my dad said about Mom needing me. I didn't know what else to do, so every day after school, I started going home and resting next to her in bed. It felt like the right thing to do. I tried. Terupt taught me that too. May. Jessica. Act 11, Scene 1. Welcome to the hospital waiting room where every face is a concerned face. Who knows what's on the minds of all those worried people? They keep busy in different ways. Some read, a few watch television, one lady knits. Enter us, the kids from room 202. We sat quietly, kind of looking around, anxiously awaiting the outcome of Mr. Terupt's surgery. Was it even okay to talk? I wondered. A lot of other people from school sat waiting, hoping for Mr. Terupt. Mrs. Williams and her red-haired secretary, Ms. Barton, waiting. Mr. Loomis and Mr. Reddy sat and waited. Everyone at school liked Mr. Terupt. That was just another testament to him. Technically, today was a school day, but Mrs. Williams helped us make arrangements to be here. "I can't make this a school-sponsored field trip," she told us about a week ago. At that point, we knew when Mr. Terupt's surgery had been scheduled, and Mrs. Williams realized our entire class planned to be there. "I can't have all of you climb onto a bus and be taken to the hospital," she said. "Our parents can drive us there," Anna suggested, "and we can help each other with rides." "I like that idea," Mrs. Williams said. "Then you can leave when you want or not go at all, if you'd rather not." I thought about Jeffrey. Miss Newbury, Miss Kelsey, and Mrs. Warner also came. The school was able to provide substitutes for their classes, but not everyone's. I expect all the teachers would have been here if it weren't a school day. That was when I realized that Mr. Terupt didn't have any family present. Not one person. I thought of his desk back in our classroom. Every teacher has family pictures on his or her desk. Not Mr. Terupt. And there were only 2 flower arrangements in his hospital room. One from Ms. Newbury and one from the Snow Hill School. But no Mom or Dad were sitting next to his bed. How had I missed it? Not one family picture. Not one family member visiting or waiting next to me. Did he even have any family, I wondered? Had my mother noticed and not said anything? Had any of my classmates had these same thoughts? All of a sudden, there was so much I didn't know about my beloved teacher. I just wished he'd open up more and give me a chance, I heard Miss Newbury said. She was talking quietly to Mrs. Williams. He was beginning to let me get close. I don't know what he's so afraid of. Or what he's hiding, Mrs. Williams added. I just want the chance, Miss Newberry said. I care about him so much, and so do these kids. He'd better pull through. I heard Miss Newberry's voice crack. Mrs. Williams put an arm around her. They were quiet. I suddenly had a lot of unanswered questions going through my mind, but none of them mattered if Mr. Terupt didn't make it through the rest of surgery. How long will this operation take? Anna asked. She didn't realize she had blurted this out until she met our startled looks. Thanks, Anna, I thought. The perfect candidate to break our silence. 8 hours, Luke said. Less if it all goes well. More if there are complications. Silence again. Luke. I'd visited the hospital several times, but never once had I gone to the waiting room. Not until I sat in there with my class on brain surgery day. Sat for hours. The room had a nice layout. The architects had found a way to maximize, dollar word, the area while keeping a large perimeter. The room represented a rectangle, with little sections of wall jutting into the interior here and there. This created corners and smaller spaces within the larger room. I figured this was important because people wanted privacy. At least that was how it felt while I waited. Danielle. We sat together in the waiting room. I sat next to my mother. We left Grandma home, not knowing how she would handle being in the company of Terry and Anna. Anna sat across from us next to her mother. It reminded me of our class meetings. We didn't form a circle on the floor, and we didn't have the microphone, but it was close enough, except no one talked. Mr. Terupt always started our meetings, so we sat silent, until Anna spoke up, thank goodness. But after Luke answered her question, no one else talked, at least not until Jeffrey surprised us. He put our class microphone in the middle of that big wooden table. I stared at it. Then I looked at Jeffrey. How did he know to bring it? Just a hunch, he said. I noticed that he and Jessica were looking at each other. I reached down and took the microphone. Remember the first time Mr. Terupt bought this out? I said. I passed the microphone to Alexia. I was like, Teach is a weirdo, she said, but turned out to be pretty cool. Sort of like the grass thing. 77,537,412, Luke reminded us. That grass project was awesome. The microphone moved around our square, and we shared different stories and memories. It was perfect. Then a doctor came into the waiting room. Jessica. Act 11, Scene 2. Enter a man wearing lime green scrubs and a matching hospital cap. The kind that cinches around your head like a shower cap. I saw him the moment he came through the door. Was he coming for us? It was too soon, wasn't it? Had something gone wrong with Mr. Terupt's surgery? I stiffened. Then I noticed Jeffrey. He was practically hyperventilating. This place, and especially the sight of a doctor, triggered such horrible memories for him. I wrapped my arm around him and whispered, It's okay, just breathe. My mom also helped comfort him. She sat on the other side of Jeffrey and hugged him too. Mom knew his story. I had told her, but others stared at him, wondering why he was so worked up. The doctor didn't come over to us, and Jeffrey calmed down. Instead, the doctor made his way over to the knitting lady. I saw him take a deep breath as he got closer to her, and I wondered if it was one of those big breaths you take in order to get ready to deliver bad news. He pulled a chair next to the knitting lady and sat down across from her. Once she realized he was there, her hands and yarn and needles all stopped working and rested in her lap. Her eyes looked into the doctor's face. His lips never moved, but his head shook from side to side, and his face expressed sorrow. The knitting lady's strong chin dropped. The yarn and the needles fell to the ground, and her hands covered her face. She began to shake silently with lonesome tears. The doctor placed a hand on her back. He said, I'm very sorry. He waited for a while, then rose and walked out of the room. I felt silent tears trickling down my cheeks. I looked at my friends and saw some of them with tears too. I was scared, but I wasn't alone. Jeffrey. Hard to breathe. So many bad memories, bad news everywhere. I saw the doc walk in. I couldn't catch my breath. Jessica noticed. She and her mom wrapped their arms around me and helped me calm down. The doc wasn't for us. He handed out his bad news to someone else. I know how that goes. I'm so sorry, the doc had told my family. That was all he had to say. We knew Michael was dead. Danielle. Peter took the microphone. He still wasn't talking. He'd answer if you asked him something, but we weren't ignoring him anymore. But for the most part, he stayed silent. And he never talked about Mr. Terupt or anything to do with the accident. I held my breath along with everyone else. At least that's what it felt like. I remember the time I said we should invite the collaborative kids to our holiday centers. I saw Mr. T wipe his eyes after I said that. I didn't know why then. Now I do. Peter put the microphone back on the table. Alexia. I took the mic again after hearing Peter. Like I knew what he was talking about, understanding stuff about Teach that he didn't before. That was true for me too. Teach took me in the hall and said some stuff that I hated him for. Really hated him. But all he did was tell me the truth. I didn't want to listen. I hated him and the truth. I stopped talking, but I didn't pass the mic yet. I was thinking. I hope Teach wakes up so he can see that I've listened, I added. He helped me. I'd like him to know that. I put the microphone back on the table. Peter picked it up again. Peter. I decided to pick up the microphone again and say one more thing. Maybe talking about Mr. T and sharing memories would help him pull through the surgery. Surgery. Brain surgery. I couldn't believe he had to have brain surgery. And all because of me. Because of the snowball I threw. My thoughts always came back to this. I remember the time I flung that frisbee. Mr. T said a few things to me, but that was it. I remember the puddle on the floor. He said a few things, but that was it. Nothing bad ever happens, I thought. I chucked that snowball. No matter what any of you say, it's all my fault. It always will be. I stopped talking so that I could fight back my tears. But I didn't put down the microphone. I wasn't done yet. I'm sorry, I said as I looked around at everyone. I'm sorry you're here because of me. I let the microphone roll back onto the table. No one had time to respond because another doctor walked in. And this time, he was our man.